She stood in the glow of the hallway lamp, barefoot on the cool tile, her hair still damp from a late shower. A loose shirt hung off one shoulder, collar slipping just enough to expose the soft curve of her collarbone. She didn't speak at first, just looked at me like she was trying to figure out if I knew something I wasn't supposed to. I held her gaze too long. I knew I should have looked away. Should have said something simple, something polite. But I didn't. Instead, I handed her the tea I made, and her fingers lingered over mine. A heartbeat, maybe two. Then she whispered, "You shouldn't be here this late." I didn't answer. And neither did she. Not really. I met her the week I moved into the upstairs unit. The landlord said the building was quiet, mostly professionals, no college noise, no late-night parties. Just what I was looking for. I'd spent the last 4 years drifting student jobs, a breakup that left a mess in its wake, a few too many nights trying to convince myself I was fine. I was ready for stillness, for quiet, for something that didn't feel like it was about to fall apart. My new place had creaky floors, old radiators, and a slanted window that faced the street. But it also had this light in the afternoons, the kind that painted everything golden for about 20 minutes, like the apartment was trying to remind me beauty could exist in small places. I met her the second day, when I was struggling to get a box of books through the narrow hallway. She was locking her door, dressed in a navy blouse tucked into tailored jeans, her heels clicking softly on the wood. She didn't say anything at first, just watched me fumble, then stepped forward. "Hold the bottom," she said simply, sliding her keys into her bag and crouching beside me. She smelled like orange peel and something softer, like sandalwood. Her hands were steady on the box, and when we set it down in my entryway, I realized I hadn't said a word. She looked at me, brows slightly raised. "I'm Nora," she said. "Daniel," I replied, a little too quickly. She nodded once, then stepped back. "Nice to meet you, Daniel." And that was it. No awkward small talk. No forced neighborly chat. Just her name, and the quiet confidence of someone who didn't feel the need to fill silences. I didn't expect to see her again so soon, but 3 days later, I found myself unlocking my door just as she was stepping out. She paused, looked up, then smiled, just a flicker. "You're settling in okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "Thanks again, by the way." She shrugged, like it was nothing. That box looked like it was about to win the fight. I laughed, and to my surprise, she did too, a low, quiet chuckle that didn't last long, but lingered in the air even after she'd walked away. From then on, it was little things. Shared nods in the hall. A morning as she passed me on the stairs. Once, I heard music coming faintly through her floor, jazz, something old, something sad. I learned her routine by accident. She left every morning at 7:45, heels soft against the wood. Came home around 6. Lights on by 7. Tea kettle whistling just after. I started to time things. I'd wait a few minutes before heading out, just in case I caught her by the mailbox. I told myself it was coincidence, that I was just learning the rhythm of the building. But I knew better. There was something about the way she moved. Not in a performative way, more like she had nothing to prove. She wasn't trying to be seen. She simply was. Older, obviously. Mid-40s, maybe. But there was nothing mom-like or predictable about her. She had this calm energy, like she'd already weathered the kinds of storms I was still bracing for. One night, the hallway light was out. I fumbled for my keys, cursing under my breath. Then I heard her voice. "Use the light from your phone." I turned. She was standing a few steps behind me, holding a paper bag of groceries, the edges slightly damp from the rain outside. "Want me to hold that?" I offered. She hesitated, just for a second, then handed it over. We walked up together, not saying much. At her door, she turned and took the bag. "You live alone?" she asked, not accusing, just curious. "Yeah," I said. "You?" A small smile. "For a long time now." She didn't elaborate, and I didn't ask. She stepped inside, and I stood there, my hand still on my doorknob, listening to her lock the bolt behind her. That night, I didn't turn on the TV, didn't scroll through my phone. I just sat in the quiet, thinking about the way her voice sounded in the dark. Something had begun. I didn't know what yet, but I felt it. Quiet as a breath, heavy as a held gaze. And I couldn't stop replaying the way she said it, for a long time now. It stayed with me, like she was telling me more than she meant to, or maybe exactly what she meant to. The next time we talked, it wasn't in the hallway or over some shared task. It was late, nearly 11 p.m. The building was quiet, the kind of silence that settles in after the world exhales. I'd gone out for a walk to clear my head, insomnia again, and when I came back, I noticed her apartment door was cracked open, just an inch. I paused, not in a nosy way, just noticed. Then she stepped into view, barefoot, holding a book in one hand and a glass of something amber in the other. Her hair was down longer than I'd realized. Loose, slightly curled at the ends. She looked up and saw me. "Hey," I said, suddenly unsure if I should have spoken at all. She didn't flinch, just tilted her head slightly, her expression unreadable. "You walk at night?" she asked. "Sometimes. Helps me think." She nodded, then opened her door wider, motioning me in with the kind of casual grace that made it feel inevitable. I hesitated only a second before stepping inside. Her apartment was warmer than mine, not just in temperature, but in feeling. Dim lights, shelves full of books, real books, the kind with underlines and folded pages. A record player sat on a small wooden table by the window, soft jazz crackling under the weight of needle and dust. She poured me a drink without asking what I liked, handed it over with that same quiet confidence. "I didn't think you'd come," she said, sitting on the couch and pulling her knees up under her. Honestly, I admitted, neither did I. We sat in a silence that didn't ask to be filled. She sipped her drink. I looked around the room, trying not to study her too obviously. She caught me anyway. "You're observant," she said. "Is that a compliment?" "It's just true." She looked at me then, really looked. Men your age usually aren't. Not in the way that matters. I didn't know how to respond to that. So I didn't. She set her glass down. "What did you see when you looked around this room?" I glanced at the shelves. The photographs. The single ashtray on the windowsill. "You live alone," I said quietly, but not unhappily. Her smile flickered, then steadied. "Close." She stood and walked to the window. Her back was to me, and I realized she trusted me enough to turn away. That did something to me more than any flirtation could have. "Most of the time, I like the quiet," she said. "But some nights, it's too loud in my own head." "I get that." She turned, leaning against the glass, arms crossed. "What is it you think I'm doing?" she asked. I blinked. "Sorry." She stepped forward, slowly. "Letting you in like this. Inviting you in. Talking to you. What do you think it means?" Her voice wasn't accusatory. It was measured, curious. I swallowed. My heart was loud in my ears. "I don't think it means anything. Yet," I said. She studied me for a long moment, then exhaled softly. "Good." The record ended with a faint hiss. She didn't move to start it again. "You should probably go," she said, not unkindly. "It's late." I nodded, standing. She walked me to the door but didn't open it. Just stood there, her hand resting on the doorknob. "I don't invite people in, Daniel. Not often." "I know," I said. Our eyes met, and something flickered between us. Not heat, exactly. Something slower, sadder, but alive. "Good night," she said, finally opening the door. "Good night, Nora." I stepped out. She closed the door gently behind me. No slam, no click of the lock. Just that soft, deliberate hush of wood meeting frame. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was restless, but because I felt something waking up in me, something I hadn't let myself feel in a long time. And I had a feeling she knew exactly what she was doing, even if she didn't want to admit it. Not yet. Days passed. Not a week, not quite. For days, to be exact. I told myself I was busy. Work, laundry, half-hearted attempts at meal prepping, but that was a lie. I stayed away because I didn't trust myself to be casual anymore. And maybe I sensed that she didn't, either. But it didn't last. Thursday evening, I was coming up the stairs with groceries when I saw her sitting at the end of the hallway, just outside her door. Her legs were tucked underneath her, a cup of tea cradled in both hands, her hair pulled back loosely. She looked up and smiled when she saw me. "I thought you moved out," she said, voice light, but not empty. "I thought maybe I should." She tilted her head. "Why?" I didn't answer right away. I set the bag down beside my door, leaned against the wall across from her. "Because something's happening," I said. "And I don't know where the line is." She stared into her cup for a long time. Then she nodded once, slowly. "I don't either." A gust of wind passed through the open window at the end of the hall, rustling the plants she kept on the sill. It smelled faintly of rain, even though the sky had stayed dry all day. She looked at me again, softer now. "I've been alone for a long time, Daniel. Not in the dramatic sense, just emotionally. I'm used to making tea for one, to silence, to not being noticed." "I notice you," I said before I could stop myself. "I know." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I didn't move toward her. I didn't touch her. But something passed between us in that moment, something unspoken and undeniable. After a while, she stood. "Would you like to come in for a bit?" I hesitated, then followed her inside. The light was low again, that same soft glow I remembered from the first night. She poured me a glass of water this time. No alcohol, no soundtrack, just quiet. "I'm not trying to start something I can't finish," she said, sitting down across from me on the arm of the couch. "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means I'm not a project, and you're not a distraction. And this," she gestured vaguely between us, "whatever it is, can't be a reaction to loneliness." "I don't think it is. But you're young," she said. "You still have so many versions of yourself ahead of you. I've already lived through mine." "Maybe," I said, "but that doesn't make what I feel less real." She looked at me like she was searching for a lie or an escape hatch. Then finally, she sighed. "You're very calm about all this." "I'm not calm," I said, and it surprised us both. "I've just gotten good at hiding it." The kettle on her stove began to hiss, not loud, but enough to break the moment. She stood to turn it off, and I stayed seated, hands folded tight, grounding myself in the upholstery. When she came back, she handed me a new cup of tea. We drank in silence. This time, it wasn't heavy. It wasn't uncomfortable. It was just close. At one point, our fingers brushed on the rim of the same mug. A small thing, a quiet thing, but it was enough to send a current up my arm. She didn't flinch, and neither did I. Eventually, I said, "You make it really hard to stay neutral." She laughed, a real one this time. "Is that what you're aiming for?" "Not anymore." She looked at me, her eyes clearer than I'd ever seen them. "Do you want this to go somewhere? I want to know who you are when you're not guarding everything." She blinked once, then stood slowly, walked to her record player, and set the needle down. The music that followed was soft and low piano, mostly. Something sad, something honest. She didn't ask me to dance, didn't make a move, just stood there, eyes closed for a beat too long. I stayed until the record ended. When I left, she didn't walk me to the door this time. I let myself out quietly, and for the first time, I realized my hands were shaking. Not because I wanted more, but because I already did. It changed after that. Not dramatically. Nothing you could point to and say, "There, that's where the line was crossed." But the silence between us had a new shape. Heavier, softer, like we were both waiting for something to bloom or collapse. I started spending more time near the window that faced hers. We never waved, never made gestures. But I noticed the rhythm of her blinds. When she opened them, when she didn't. There were more hallway encounters, more quiet check-ins. She started leaving her door open just a little when she was home, just enough for light to spill into the hall. It felt like an invitation, even if she never said the words. One Saturday, I brought her a plant, a little spider plant I found at a market. I didn't know why. I just saw it and thought of her. She opened the door in a faded sweatshirt and yoga pants, barefoot again. She looked at the plant, then at me. For me, I shrugged. "Your windowsill looked like it needed company." She laughed, then stepped aside. "Come in." She placed the plant on her windowsill and looked at it like it had said something kind to her. Then she turned and poured us both coffee, no sugar, just a splash of cream. She remembered. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table. Her sleeves were pushed up to her elbows, and she rubbed absently at the inside of her wrist as she talked. A small, unconscious gesture. I started noticing things like that, the tiny ways her body moved when she was half in her head. "I used to paint," she said suddenly, out of nowhere. "Not well, but enough to lose hours." "Why'd you stop?" She sipped her coffee. "He didn't like the mess." I didn't ask who. I didn't have to. She glanced at me. "You ever notice how easy it is to become smaller for someone else without realizing you're doing it?" I nodded. "And how hard it is to unlearn that." She looked at me then, really looked, and something passed between us. Not heat, not romance, just recognition. Like we were both survivors of something invisible. "I like who I am now," she said. "But sometimes I forget how I got here." "You're still here," I said. "That counts." She didn't reply, but she didn't look away either. Later, we ended up on her couch. Not close, not far. She had her feet tucked beneath her. I was nursing the last of my coffee. She played a record, some old Nina Simone album, and the room filled with that low, aching voice that made everything else feel distant. At one point, she asked, "Do your friends know you spend time with me?" "No," I said. "Not really." "Because you're worried what they'd think?" "Because I want to keep this safe. Whatever this is." She was quiet after that. Then, softly, she said, "I was someone's wife for 15 years. I was someone's daughter, someone's friend. But I don't remember the last time I was just someone's something. You are, I said quietly. To me. She looked over, startled, like she hadn't expected honesty so plainly delivered. And still, I didn't move toward her. Still, I kept my hands in my lap. But in that silence, she leaned back, rested her head against the cushion, and closed her eyes. I'm tired, Daniel, she whispered. I know. I don't want to be rescued. I'm not trying to save you, I said. I just like being where you are. When I left that night, I didn't say goodbye. I just touched the back of the couch where she'd rested her hand and walked out quietly. The air outside was colder than I expected. But inside, something was warming. Something fragile and real. There was a stretch of rain that week. For days straight. The kind that blurs the windows and makes the air smell like wet pavement and wilted jasmine. I didn't see her much. Her door stayed closed. The hallway quiet. I could hear the occasional creak of floorboards above me, the hum of her vacuum, the faint clang of a mug against porcelain. But no footsteps in the hall. No lingering glances. Just distance, not hostile, not cold. Just quiet space. By Thursday night, I couldn't take it anymore. I knocked. Not hard. Not urgently. Just enough. There was a pause, then the sound of locks turning. When she opened the door, she looked like she hadn't slept. Her hair was pulled back hastily, and she wore an old cardigan over a tank top. Bare feet again. Always bare feet. I didn't mean to disappear, she said before I could speak. I wasn't worried. I lied. Just missed your tea. Her mouth tugged into a tired smile. Come in. The place was darker than usual. One lamp on, shadows folding over the corners of the room. She moved slowly, like she was carrying weight in her body she hadn't quite named. She poured the tea wordlessly. I stood there, unsure what to do with my hands. When she handed me the cup, our fingers didn't touch. Not like they used to. Did I do something wrong? I asked finally. She looked up. No. Then what is this? She exhaled, setting her own mug down before sitting on the couch. She curled her legs under her like she always did, but her posture was stiffer now. You make me feel like I'm allowed to want again, she said, barely above a whisper. And that terrifies me. I sat across from her. Close, but not enough. I'm not asking for anything, I said gently. I know. That's what makes it harder. We sat in silence. The rain tapped gently at the window. I used to think my life was over, she said. Not in the dramatic sense. Just the part of it that mattered. The part where people looked at me like I was still in the story, not just watching from the sidelines. I didn't speak. She went on, her voice steadier now. Then you moved in. And I started noticing things again. The way someone's voice lifts when they're nervous. The way you pause before speaking. How you keep your right hand curled slightly even when you're relaxed. And I remembered, oh, I used to care about things like that. I felt my throat tighten. And then I hated myself for noticing, she added. Because you're younger. Because I'm supposed to know better. I don't think this is about age, I said quietly. No, she agreed. It's about timing. It's about lives that weren't supposed to overlap in this way. I set my mug down and leaned forward, elbows on my knees. Maybe timing's wrong. Maybe it's perfect. I don't know. She looked at me, really looked. And I saw all of it in her eyes. The pull, the guilt, the ache she tried to bury. I think about touching you, she said. More than I wanted to admit. The room held its breath. I think about it too, I said, my voice barely there. We didn't move. The space between us buzzed like static, not rushed, not frantic, just unbearably present. But I don't want to ruin this, she said, her voice cracking. You won't, I promised. You don't know that. No, I said, but I trust you. And that was the moment. The moment something changed, not in action, not in gesture, but in understanding. She reached across the small space between us and took my hand. Not for long, just enough. Then let it go. We should be careful, she said. I know, but neither of us moved to stand. Outside, the rain picked up, drumming harder against the windows. Inside, we just sat there, side by side, in a room where time had slowed to a hush. Whatever was coming, we knew we weren't the same people who'd first met in that hallway. We had crossed something invisible, and there was no going back. It was Sunday when it happened. Late morning, the kind where time feels suspended. Rain had finally cleared, and the sky held that strange after-storm stillness, like the world was catching its breath. I heard her door open before I saw her. That familiar creak. I didn't move from my chair by the window. I just listened. Then came the knock. I opened the door. She stood there, hair loose, coat barely buttoned, like she hadn't planned on coming but did anyway. Her eyes were softer than I'd seen them in days, like something had settled. "Can I come in?" she asked. I stepped aside. We didn't speak as she walked into my apartment. She didn't look around like guests do. She went straight to the window, touched the edge of the curtain, and looked out. "I had a dream last night," she said. "You and I were sitting in silence, and I kept trying to speak, but every time I opened my mouth, nothing came out. You didn't seem to mind." She turned to me. "You just waited." I didn't know what to say, so I waited again. She walked closer. Not fast, not dramatic, just with intent. "I don't want to wait anymore," she said. And then she kissed me. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't hungry or cinematic. It was quiet, grounded, like she needed to know what it felt like to cross that last, invisible distance. Her hand rested on my chest for balance, fingers curling lightly into my shirt. I didn't move, didn't pull her in. I let her choose. When she pulled back, she kept her forehead against mine. "I'm not asking for forever," she whispered. "I just want to be allowed this. This one thing that's mine. Just once." My hand found hers. I held it gently, anchoring her. "You're allowed," I said. She exhaled, not in relief, but in release. Like something inside her had finally been set down. We spent the day together in small ways. No fanfare. She made tea. I washed the mugs. We didn't talk about what came next. That night, she fell asleep on my couch, her legs tucked under a blanket, her hands still loosely tangled with mine. And I stayed awake beside her, watching her breathe, listening to the hum of the radiator, feeling, more than ever, that strange ache of knowing something beautiful can't last forever, but also knowing that doesn't make it any less real. When morning came, she woke slowly. Her first words were quiet. "I should go." I nodded, but didn't let go of her hand. "Will I see you?" I asked. Her smile was faint, a little sad. "Yes, just maybe not as often." I understood. She kissed my cheek, touched my jaw lightly, and left without another word. Weeks passed. Her door stayed mostly closed, but sometimes I'd catch a glimpse, her coat, the flicker of a lamp, her silhouette behind the blinds. We never spoke of it again, but we didn't need to. Some connections aren't built to last in daylight. They live in the quiet, in glances, in rooms filled with silence and memory. And some part of me, the part that still watched for her shadow on the wall, knew I'd carry her with me, not as a regret, but as a truth I was lucky to find, even if I couldn't keep it. The quiet never left, but it no longer felt lonely.